Welcome to Honest Money, your best guide to financial freedom. I'm Warren Ingram, the author of a few best-selling books, and I'm also an award-winning financial planner, and I've helped thousands of people on their journey to financial freedom. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I am here to share my experience and the best ideas that I've learned, and I hope these ideas help you on your journey to financial freedom. Welcome to another episode of Honest Money. We've got quite an interesting, kind of a little bit of a different slant on our show this time around. So just to introduce our guest, he's the CEO of TransUnion Africa, Naik. Lee, thanks so much for joining us.
Warren, it's an absolute pleasure being on your show today. Thank you very much.
So the reason it's different for our listeners is that we're talking about something I tell people not to do, which is we're going to be talking about spending. And I always try and make sure that we spend nothing and save everything, which is obviously not right. We've got to live a life. But I think, also just thematically, we're talking about it in the month of November, and it's, the Black Friday month, and one of my pet hates in life, because it's the retailers convincing us to spend and then telling us that they're giving us deals and bargains. And I think that, for me, it's a brilliant topic. I'm so glad that we're talking about it, because I think it's not necessarily about avoiding shopping. Maybe it's about being intelligent when you do it and being smart around your money. But also there's a heck of a lot to know, lots of pitfalls, lots of traps, and we're going to get into all of that. But before we do that, Lee, I know you want to talk about Black Friday, but the question I get the most, and it's the one I can't answer because I don't dig credit, is people starting out when they start work. They always say, my friends and my family are telling me that I need to get a credit card or I need to get a store account to get my credit score going. So just what's kind of your top tip for someone who is starting out, doesn't have a credit issue at all, but wants to get a good credit rating? What should they do? What shouldn't they do?
It's a great question, Warren. I guess it's probably worth telling you, Warren, that credit's bigger than you think. Of the 40 million adults in South Africa, 27.2 million do have some form of credit facility, from a personal loan to a mortgage to finance for their car. I think your advice is actually spot on. If you are starting on the journey to credit, and remember, credit is a powerful utility. It comes with great responsibility. It's how one uses that. And I guess the first step normally is to start to build out what we call a credit profile. Banks are the lenders. When they want to assess you for credit in future, they will look to see what kind of profile you have. The easiest foray into some form of credit is probably a store card. So it's the retailer that sells clothing. It's probably the easiest credit to get because there's a little requirement on you to show an asset or show a balance sheet around that. So my advice is, do open up a small credit card account, a small retail store account with your clothing retailer. And the key thing here is whether it's a big amount or a small amount, Warren, but to actually pay these amounts consistently. Now, we can talk a bit around payments and defaults and the scariest stuff of credit, but there's responsibility that comes on us as consumers when we take these credit facilities.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks. So I think it's a key point. If you're on this journey yourself, is you do need to get some credit. You do need to show that you have a very good discipline around money, and that you pay it off exactly when they want you to pay it off, and you pay it off to the amount that they want you to do. And if possible, from a financial planning point of view, pay it off faster. Show a great track record, and then that's the secret. That's what people want to see when they lend you money, is that they can trust you to pay it back.
It is probably worth noting that the world cannot do without credit. Some people can if you have high levels of disposable income available. But the truth is that we as consumers do need credit to create leverage to access finance for a house or finance for a car. But I think the point that you're making is an important point. With this access to facilities comes the requirement from the lender to actually say, honor your commitments to me. Now, here's an important point, which really came to bear in the midst of the pandemic over the last 18 months. Sometimes things do not go as you've planned. And what the lenders, what TransUnion says is, it's okay. Things happen. Don't stop to ignore what's going on. And remember, people ignore these facts around them, Warren. For example, I mentioned there are 27.2 million active credit users. Every credit bureau, I'm one of the big 5 credit bureaus, we meant to give you a free credit report a month. All 5 credit bureaus, when put together, don't give up more than 600,000 credit reports a year.
What?
That tells you, Warren, that we're scared of bad news. We want to ignore the thing called finances, but financial health is key to our success. That's the stats. 600,000 out of 27.2 million active credit consumers.
So that's not because you're not giving the data, it's because people are not asking for it.
Correct. And we advertise, it's available on digital, on our contact center, it's available via our partners, some retailers and banks. There are many ways to get it without exposing your vulnerability. The truth, however, is that it's a scary place right now. One of the stats we talk about quite often is something called the indebtedness of the average consumer. And what we talk about here, Warren, is a household debt to a disposable income ratio of around 75%. 75.1% on a year-to-date basis. So after you've paid these debts that you owe to the bank, you have less than 25% available to live your lives. Now, Black Friday aside, it was tough before we had this conversation today. It was a lot tougher in the course of the 18 months when the economy changed, jobs changed, SMME shut down, the world has changed. And I guess I'd go back to the point and say, credit is a powerful asset. It's leverage, but it comes with a responsibility that deserves, as provided by the lenders. They all have these rules, but it starts with getting the knowledge. And if I've got to say this over and over again, your credit report gives you the insights of all of your credit facilities, all the debt you have. If you don't know the knowledge, you don't have the knowledge, how do you make decisions? So it is scary, but we as bureaus, we as banks and lenders try to make it easier for you to get access to this knowledge.
Right. So that's our financial education part. Now we need to get to some information around and I want to say Black Friday, but also online shopping. Because I think that the two are very much related, and it's something we don't really think about too much around online shopping. It is a growing trend. We all like it. It's all convenient, but there are some pitfalls that we need to be careful of and things to avoid. So I want to open the floor to you, Lee, and just say, let's get going on this. If we look at Black Friday, let's say in 2019 and 2020, there were definitely some trends that you've observed, and I think it's important to understand that before we embark on 2021 and start spending our money recklessly. So what have you found?
So that's a great question. I guess there is some really good data that could inform decisions as we go forward. What we found in general was that people do spend more money in the month of November than prior to the month of November. In some cases, they actually drop their balances in December, but in many cases not. So that sounds a bit complex. Let me break it down for you. If you look at an overall basis, in 2020, the month of November, there was a lot more credit used in November 2020 when compared to 2019. Now, it can't just be only for Black Friday, but Black Friday is a key driver of November business. One is linked to Black Friday. Secondly, people are starting to buy their holidays in November. They're starting to make plans for December. But by and large, you see a massive increase in the number of volumes that comes into TransUnion. So we connect to every single online retailer, online player, and we see these volumes coming up. So the first stat is that there's been a massive increase in this period. The second stat was, it's a really interesting data point that I'm happy to reveal on your show today. We actually found that we always give the millennials and Gen Zs quite a hard time saying, these are the reckless youth, these are the guys messing up the numbers. That the reckless youth are not that reckless, and they start to make more informed decisions. Now, that was 2019. In 2020, the balances actually increased substantially, right? People were spending more, but for a couple of reasons. I think people are looking for outlets to be happy, outlets to be joyful because of all the tough times we've gone through. So people took on more credit. That's the second data point. I guess the next data point is where it gets a little bit scary, right? We're a credit bureau, first and foremost, been around since 1901. The one thing we track is something called defaults. Defaults tells you whether you're paying your account on time. So whether you've taken up that store card to build your credit profile, if you don't pay your account 2 or 3 months in a row, you start entering the default on your credit profile. That's the basis on which decisions happen. Here's the scary part, just looking at 2020. I asked my team to look at the data of people that opened up new accounts just in November and how those people fared just 6 months later. Now, you'd remember, Warren, from our previous conversations, there's more than one type of credit. You've got clothing accounts, you have retail accounts, you've got what we call open credit utilities. So the normal credit card you can spend in multiple places. So we wanted to analyze two things. One, what was happening in terms of people paying their accounts on time 6 months later. And what we found is, for example, in the retail installment area where you buy furniture or you buy some other piece of equipment, you paid over several months, we found that 30% of accounts opened in the month of November 2020, 6 months later, were in default, 30%, right? That's scary, that's scary. And this is what's happening. New accounts opening up 30%. Clothing accounts, 16% were in default just 6 months later. What was interesting as another alternative data point is that credit cards were only in default 6 months later at a level of 8.4%. Now, it sounds high, but it's actually lower than the benchmark. A normal arrears level 6 months later is only 9%. Now, it's interesting as to what new behaviors emerged over the last 18 months. Consumers have realized that a credit card gives you the most amount of utility, meaning you can do more than one thing with it. You could buy fuel, you could buy food, you could buy clothing, whereas a store card, a retail card, a clothing card, another form of credit actually can't do that. So we actually find, in this is what we call a payment hierarchy. How do people think about the bills they have every month? People have been paying their credit cards generally on time to allow them to access a way to fund that lifestyle. Remember, I said that 75.1% was the indebtedness level, right, of the average consumer. So that credit card is playing a key way in how they're living their lives, right? And that tells you that it's a tough environment for the average consumer, and they're living very, very close to the line of being able to afford it. Now, Warren, it's probably prudent to say that it isn't all negative. There is some good advice that one can consider. But when you start to think about the advice and the way forward, we need to recognize that from an interest rate perspective, that credit is linked to the interest rate of the economy, the lending rates that banks and lenders give us. We've heard, and I'm sure you've spoken about on the show more recently, is that we're now going into an upcycle. And the typical analyst is saying we could go as high as a 1% increase over the course of 2022. Whether it's for Black Friday, you're about to make a decision saying, hey, I want that new 65-inch TV, or I'm going to buy a new car. We better ask ourselves, how close to the edge are we of being able to afford something? What if something changed that you couldn't control? There are many things you can control and things that you can't control. What can you do, Warren, to actually make a better decision as you think about 2022? I hope that makes sense, Warren.
Yeah, it does. And I think it's a little bit frightening and depressing on the one side, but it gives us quite a lot of kind of red flags that we can focus on as the consumer, someone who spends money. And the thing I'm taking from, well, there's a few things I'm taking from the information you've given us. One, be really careful of opening new accounts now in this month because someone's offering you a deal. Because if you do, what your stats are showing is that 3 out of the 10 people who do that and open a new account, they can't pay that account off within the next 6 months. So that's telling me if I'm a consumer and I need to open an account to get a Black Friday deal in the month of November, there's a really good chance that I might not be able to pay either some of the money or all of the money that I owe. And so just be careful. Just stop and think is my advice to someone is, the online, well, all retailers are really good. Their job in life is to sell us stuff. They're either going to sell us stuff that we need, or they're going to tell us that we need this and where we don't really, and they're going to create a need in our minds. And then they're going to say to us, gee, this is the bargain of a century. You need to buy this now because this deal is never going to repeat itself again. And for me, fascinating. You mentioned TVs. I'm a TV fan. I love looking at them, and I just see these deals coming past, and they'll show you, this TV's like 30% cheaper than it was 6 months ago or 3 months ago, whatever the deal is. But it's amazing when you actually go and start to keep record of those things, you realize that those great bargains are not always great bargains. Actually, sometimes the prices are the same. I'm not saying that all Black Friday deals are a myth. That's not true. There are some great deals, but actually the retailers are doing a job, which is they need to sell stuff to us. And my sense of this, Lee, and I know I'm not putting words in your mouth. This is the Honest Money Show. Is I think just be really careful that the fact that someone tells you it's a deal, do your homework. Go and find out and do some scoping about whatever it is that you want to buy. Then don't buy it. Think about it. In my life, when I want to buy a new TV, I go and find 3 or 4 great prices. Then I go and I give it a day, and I go to my wife and I say, okay, I'd like to buy a new TV. And then she goes, what's wrong with our old TV? And there's nothing wrong with our old TV. It's just that there's a new one, and it's now not 4K, it's 8K. I don't even know what it means, but it sounds amazing. And they're telling me about all the sound and the picture, and it's, the TV's curved and whatever. It's just the retailer selling me stuff. So I think for me, my advice to someone listening to what you've told us now, Lee, is just be really careful that you get a deal. But now let's just jump to online shopping, because I think it's an exploding trend worldwide. It's certainly it's made life a lot more convenient for a lot of us. People like me who hate going into a shopping mall. I'm actually happy to go and buy the groceries now, because I just go up to my office and I buy them for my wife online, and I've done my home chores for the day. But you've also got some good pointers for us about how we should do that, because there are some scary stats around fraud with online shopping.
Correct. So a couple of things worth noting is that consumers have changed the way we prioritize things. So for example, you may have prioritized a new car purchase, but in the pandemic, you realize, actually, I'm not going anywhere. I've been at home the whole time. Actually, that car is fine. The 55-inch TV is just okay. So it's important to recognize that we as consumers have changed our behaviors now, wanting and what we think is important. As a consequence, we're also expecting the businesses we buy from to evolve their thinking about how to treat us and how to position things with us. So that's just one point. The second thing is that in the midst of the pandemic, the behaviors of people have changed. So your example is you've actually used what we call an intermediary to actually purchase the groceries at your house. You can go directly to your online store, or you can go to what we call an aggregator or an intermediary. Here's an interesting stat for you. Almost 50% of the transactions that happen in the first 6 months of the pandemic that would typically happen with a physical walk-in store happened via an intermediary. So people are saying, actually, I got to choose my wellness and safety, and driving to a store I can't control the environment. Let me buy it online. So actually, traffic has moved from places where the people that are advertising to you actually can't advertise to you, because now Warren is being advertised by the intermediary. Now that's interesting, because there's more competition, and more competition means a better deal, hopefully, for Warren. So that's the one thing worth noting. The world is digital first in its default state. Digital is not just a thing. The fact that you're on Facebook and on social media, you now expect the world to work that way, because the pandemic has said it's a scary world out there. Now, talking about the scary world, we have seen an increase in digital fraud. At TransUnion and in the broader industry, for example, South African Fraud Prevention Services, we track the data of what's going on around us. What we found in our own research is there's been significant increase in 3 key industries in the last research we just released a couple of months ago. We found that online gambling, quite interesting, online gambling had the biggest increase in targeted digital fraud when compared Q2 of this year to the previous Q2 of 2020, some 934% increase in targeted digital fraud. And you may say, Lee, listen, who are these people? And the truth is that online casinos became a massive panacea to the need to go out and socialize. People did it. There's almost over 1 million people that are using online casinos every month in South Africa, right? So that's a really big number. The second thing worth noting is that we're looking for good deals. We've been locked up in our houses. People are now saying, okay, I want to go to the Kruger, I want to go on safari, I want to go to an overseas hotel. The second category of targeted digital fraud is actually fake websites selling you holidays, right? They're on Facebook Marketplace. They're a new website that looks amazing until you swipe your credit card and your money's gone. The third category is actually social sites. People want to socialize. We're tired of talking on Zoom and on Teams. We're going to meet new people. The social sites were a place where your identity was being stolen, your credit information was being stolen. But what has that got to do with Black Friday? The reality is that Black Friday deals are actually available today. As of today, you've all gotten emails on your inbox saying 30% off. Don't wait for Black Friday, because the way of buying has changed. For me, it's very, very simple. You should not be giving out your password, your credit card number over the phone to anybody ever, as a rule. Do not do that. The same applies to the world of online transactions. What is cool is that the world of managing digital fraud has evolved. Very, very few players require you to keep typing in your credit card information. And when you want to do a transaction online, if it sounds too good, Warren, the chances are is that it's not true. It isn't very good at all. So you want to use a reputable site. If you're not sure, check their rating, do a search, call up the actual contact center, ask your questions. But remember, if it feels too good, it probably isn't. So online transacting is the way of the world. It's the way of the future. It's going to be there post the pandemic in any event. And there's easier ways to access these deals. But you said something earlier, Warren, that's really important. The first thing you see may not be the best deal. Now, you've been telling your wife, hey, I need a new TV. The truth is that 8K TV had launched back in January already. And I'm pretty sure you've been tracking the price all along. From a practical advice perspective, the way I approach Black Friday, because I'm also looking for a really good deal like you are, right? And I'm probably looking for a new TV as well, just like you are. I know the make, I know the model, and the era of customer buying now isn't about brochures. We don't look at physical brochures. We've got this thing called the internet, right? Do a Google search, check the price, go onto a price check website, and actually you survey this thing. In my mind, I have a look and say to myself, okay, I'd like to buy these 5 things. But now before I go and buy these 5 things, because saying I'm going to buy 5 things is terrible advice off the bat. What are we missing? We need to pull our credit report, and it's free of charge. If you haven't pulled it, because there's almost 27 million people that haven't pulled their credit reports this year, look and see what you owe currently. Ask yourself, if Lee is correct that 75% of my income is servicing debt, what can I really afford, knowing that it may be a tough interest rate cycle? You then look at, actually, I can afford to spend 500 grand more a month, right? In the list of things of 5, ask yourself, if I have to buy one thing and I can fit it into my 500 grand, is that the one I go for? Because I may need to only choose one. And this is that thing about with great power comes great responsibility, right? Sounds like Spider-Man and Uncle Ben in a movie.
I was going to say, isn't it Superman? Yeah.
Absolutely. But what you got to do here is you got to think about and say, okay, you've got a list of things, you've got to make a choice. But there's so much ability to do research on the internet. Every product you're going to buy in the Black Friday week or in the Black Friday month is available to you. Do your research. Is it really what you want? So in my household, we have a good conversation about what my kids want and what my kids need. Surely they'd like a new Xbox or a new PlayStation or whatever the gadget is. Do they really need it? The answer is no, because the current device works just fine. If they earn the money, sure, they can spend their own money, but it must be their choice to spend their money. So we're busy teaching them in spending on credit in 2020 when compared to 2019. So when we look for panaceas to become happy and to become joyful, that credit card seems too easy because it's one swipe and I've got the instant gratification. But the reality is the reason why organizations like mine exist is that we have a view of what's happening to you, not just in the happiness you feel during Black Friday, but we're monitoring you post that event to understand how you are doing, to make sure we can help you, but also how lenders see you. And this is why it's important. Your financial health, this honest money program, is about helping you make the calls to help you become a better version of yourself, Warren. I hope some of these tips are quite useful when the listeners consider Black Friday.
Thanks, Leah. I think it's been fantastic information. And maybe before I ask you my last and favorite question, just to summarize from my perspective, and I think, spending on stuff, whether it's a TV or shoes or clothes or a car or whatever, all of those things are proven over time to give us, minutes of joy, not hours and not months and not years of joy. The things that have been proven, spending money that actually doesn't make you happy over time. Usually it leads to regret thereafter. The things where we have found that spending money does help is on experiences. In other words, you mentioned holidays, and I think the nice thing about holiday spending is it's generally something you can control. You can, a long weekend, close to the house is also a holiday. It doesn't have to be overseas in the Maldives. It can be something that is suitable for your budget. But spending on an experience that you share with your family, your friends, it gives you the anticipation, the joy of building up to the holiday, the planning the holiday itself, and then the months and years thereafter of memories. And I think that's the key to understand is, even for me, I have to keep reminding myself that new TV doesn't look actually that much better than the old TV. And the joy of buying it doesn't last very long. It's about the experiences, and really the human connection is much more important than buying stuff. So this is the Honest Money Show, and I think that's my view. But Lee, I've got to ask you my favorite question, which is, if you have to kind of meet yourself, the 21-year-old version of yourself now, knowing all the things that you know and all the lessons that you've learned, what would be the one thing that you'd want to teach yourself?
I guess a couple of things. I would say one, I've thought a lot about something called a backup career, right? So when you retire, what do you do? And I feel that even though I studied applied maths and computer science, how is it useful in your retirement career when you're 55 or 65, right? So a large consideration would be, hey, what do you do when you retire? Think about that now. And I think early planning versus waiting for 40 or 50 is an important thing. The second thing, though, to fund your lifestyle, you're going to make better choices up front. So I would say, as well as the choices were that I made, I've been lots of lessons I've made about diversifying investments, about saving, making choices like we're advising the audience today. These could actually help you later on. And it comes back to the point you just made. In the end, I would tell my 21-year-old self is, define what happiness is. Define what purpose is. We live in a continent that's abundant with potential. As a 21-year-old, you could be part of the fabric that helps us realize the potential. Focus on that, and everything else will follow. Your happiness will for sure come after you focus on things that make not just yourself, but your society, your community, the continent, a better place to live and be in.
Fantastic. Thank you. Lee Naik, CEO of TransUnion Africa. That was fantastic. I must say I learned a lot, and I've been doing this for a long time. So that's always a good sign for me. I'm sure our listeners will have learned some lessons too. Thank you so much, and best of luck avoiding the shopping this month.
Thank you, Warren. It's a pleasure being on your show today.
Thank you for listening to Honest Money. If you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me on Twitter. My handle is @Warren Ingram. Don't forget to subscribe. We're on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Chat soon.